Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another special episode of Herschel Talkers. Please like and subscribe. Be great to get those views up. We got a great returning guest on the show, former
Be a
co-host,
great Christmas present.
Christmas present, former co-host. We got Big Sean, who's been on a little hiatus. How we doing today, Sean?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. Hey, we'll jump right into it. Georgia coming off, even though it was last week, 49-14 win over Missouri. Unfortunately, didn't get the game to play Vanderbilt this week due to COVID for Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
Second time they canceled, which sucks for the seniors. It's supposed to be senior day, but it is what it is. 49-14. JT Daniels looked great. 3 touchdowns, 299 yards. I was a little nervous about this game because it's going to be on the road. It's going to be cold. How motivated was Georgia? At the time, Missouri was actually ranked 25th and won 5 out of 6. So they've been playing pretty well. But Zamir White, great game, 126 yards and a touchdown. Dijon Edwards, Dodge Random Jr., as we called him, 103 yards and a touchdown. Kenny McIntosh, James Cook got in the mix. Everybody, the running game was great, 316 yards. George Pickens, great game, 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dump truck, as Sean calls him, Darnell Washington, 61 yards. All in all, the most balanced they've played. Rolled around with them a little bit and struggled in the second quarter. JT Daniels didn't have his best stuff in the first half, but turned it on the second half. I think Monken called it a great game. But to me, the best complete game as they beat a decent Missouri team, 49-14. What was your thoughts on the game, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, the offense. I mean, the offense played, for the most part. I think you give everybody like an A for their performance. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily trying to be a Debbie Downer or a negative Nancy, but and I don't mean to disrespect James Cook this way, but to me, when you run as freely as he did, I mean, at some point with those runs, it just looked like the Great Sea parted.
Yeah.
And, he was able to attack it. And even like the same thing with Zeus White. So you do wonder at some point about the level of motivation that maybe Missouri had out there. It's but that said, we could have easily rolled around with them, squandered it, because we had some of those same issues as well. It'll be interesting to see how many of these guys come back next year. I mean, obviously, I think the current thought is that JT Daniels quarterback's coming back.
Right.
Maybe if you can get like Zamir White to come back as well, with what we've got at wide receiver. And offensive line, it could be a really good unit.
Yeah, and then also you said another big get to come back would be if we could get rumors Jordan Davis thinking about it, which would be huge.
Right. I mean, Rusty Manziel 247 reported, I think it was yesterday, that he'd heard that Jordan Davis was leaning towards coming back or was heavily considering it. So I know he's got a special relationship with Trey Scott, and he also just seems like a really mature kid. I think that degree probably is important. So
I think him being I know Mel Kiper's all over the place on his predictions, but it looks like he wasn't even in the top 10 for defensive linemen or defensive tackles, which is a little crazy. I think him getting that injury kind of hurt him a little bit. What was he out 2 or 3 games?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's struggled with injuries of some kind about every year. I know some of it's been weight related.
Yeah.
I remember having like back spasms, I guess, due to weight.
Yeah.
But
I think one of those bowl games he hurt his back like working out, like squats or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be great to get him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because to me, I think you noticed a difference. I think it showed you how important him and LeCount were when they were out.
Exactly.
I mean, it was a completely different defense.
Yeah. Transitioning in, actually, probably about 2 hours ago now, hour and a half, they had the updated bowl projections. Georgia gets Cincinnati, number 8 against number 9.
And so that's not a projection anymore. That is, in fact, confirmed. We're playing Cincinnati, correct?
Yes, that is confirmed. It's going to be a noon game, January 1st, hangover bowl for us. I think we'll probably be having adult beverages the night before. But it is going to be Mercedes-Benz. Could be, travel-wise, could be good for the Dawgs. But what I'm nervous about is how motivated, who opts out, what seniors opt out. Kirby get them up? Because Cincinnati is a good team. They won their conference. Believe they're 15th nationally, and they got a really good defense. And their coaches, keep forgetting his name, Fickle, right?
Yeah, Luke Fickle.
Luke Fickle, who's one of the up-and-coming coaches. So, and I kind of feel like this is for Georgia. It's non-Power 5. So if you beat them, you're supposed to beat them because you got more talent. But if you lose, could be a meltdown, a bad loss for the program.
That's a potential trap game.
Yeah, it is. So I kind of wish we had a different matchup, but it's confirmed it is what it is. So hope Georgia can get them up. It would be good to see, JT Daniels in the offense again, get his feet going, get feet wet again. So give him more experience. So what's your thoughts on Georgia against Cincinnati?
Well, first of all, I doubt we have any Cincinnati listeners, but my condolences on not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
To me, I think you should have been in there. If you're going to be ranked as highly as you are and you're undefeated, to me that they clearly think you're up near the top of college football. So you should have had a chance to play in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That said, and again, no disrespect to Cincinnati. I think you're 100% right. Depending on who comes back, it's a 12 o'clock game. It's clearly not what we thought expectations were going to be. It could be a total trap. But I wish that they could do a better job with the bowl system in general. I mean, to me, it seems like the way the bowls outside of the playoffs work is that you end up having one quality opponent for the most part that kind of plays I don't want to say crap. I'm not trying to disrespect Cincinnati, but just a lesser deserving. You end up getting lesser deserving matchups, right? I look at the Orange Bowl, for instance. And no disrespect to UNC, they had a great year, but they had 3 losses as well. And again, maybe I'm just old school, but I remember when the Orange Bowl was a big bowl.
Yeah.
And so to me, what's it going to be? Texas A&M, who has 1 loss against a 3-loss UNC team? It doesn't make any sense to me. I wish they could have it where, after the playoffs, you have each of the next two best teams rotate down into bowls.
Yeah. Orange Bowl, number 5 against number 13. There it is. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, who really wants to watch? Because, Texas A&M is probably going to blast them, right?
Yeah.
And no offense to UNC, again, they've had some great football teams over the years, some great football players over the years, but
they just put a beat down on that Miami team, putting 500 yards on them. Even if you do that.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, you really think that the Orange Bowl is going to make that much money off a UNC Orange Bowl? Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would have been much better to see. I mean, even if you put Florida and let them have a rematch with Texas A&M, or that's local, or Oklahoma. I mean, put somebody in there where the matchup's good. It's kind of like you're almost watching an average Saturday 3:30 game is kind of what it is.
Yeah.
But I am looking forward, though, for Cincinnati to just kind of see how well they would do against the Power 5 school. I haven't really looked at the record, but I don't really think they played anybody that was as highly ranked as we are.
Right.
I hope they play well, and hope they kind of get an opportunity, should it come again, to actually make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. So that'll be interesting to see. I could see that spread being 7 to 10 points. Georgia's favored, but I think a lot depends on how many guys opt out. And then,
to me, it's interesting too. How many of these guys that maybe go into this game for us to really play well, maybe at that point consider going to the draft? To me, the one I can really think of is Zamir White. If he has a great game there, because we haven't really heard much one way or the other about if he's going pro.
Yeah.
Does he decide to go?
Yeah, that's a good point. On the college football, so the big drama was who's getting in, and it ended up being, as of a couple hours ago, Notre Dame.
Which was all about money.
Yeah, in ratings, because they got a big following. So it's going to be number 1 Alabama against Notre Dame in Rose Bowl, and ironically, it has been moved to Arlington, Texas, due to California's restrictions. So I think they can have up to 16,000 in Texas, and then also Sugar Bowl, New Orleans. It's going to be Clemson at Ohio State. So the early spreads I've seen is Alabama 17.5-point favorite over Notre Dame, and Clemson about 6.5, 7-point favorite over Ohio State. What's your thoughts on those games?
Um, to me, like, first of all, like, I think that it's really, to me, this whole thing is going to be another showdown of Alabama versus Clemson, which have, certainly not disappointed in the past when we've watched them play. Well, actually, the last one did disappoint, but before that, they had two epic battle royales for national titles. Again, I understand everybody can have like a bad or an off day, which is what I think kind of Ohio State's offense had Saturday. But at the same time, I did see kind of some things were a bit concerning. And I get they had a lot of people out for COVID as well. That said, that offense and Justin Fields really just seemed to, struggle. It struggled mightily. I mean, there's no way to really spin it. What was he, like 9 of 20 something?
Yeah, threw a couple picks.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to make that look pretty. And again, I get that, like, that there were some players out, and you can certainly have missed assignments, receivers running the wrong routes, but that probably for most guys that are, elite level talents maybe accounts for 1 or 2 turnovers. Like, I don't think it accounts for, or it really shouldn't account for like 13, incompletions. Because it seemed like he had plenty of time back there. That said, I do give him credit for kind of just managing the storm, so to speak, and also to Ryan Day for kind of realizing what was working, which was the run game, and, using that heavily to kind of, pull away in the second half. I will say this, though, had Northwestern had any semblance of a quarterback, Northwestern beats them. I mean, that was arguably the worst second half performance. I mean, I don't know that DeJuan Mathis could have done worse than the Northwestern quarterback did. I mean, it was just bad.
He turned the ball over several times, 2 or 3 times too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you throw a pick when you're down there in the red zone. You miss a field goal, which I know is not the quarterback, but then, yeah, he had at least outside that pick in the end zone. I'm pretty certain he had at least one other pick, probably 2, and then a fumble as well. I mean, there's just no way to make that look good. And so the thing is I don't think this Ohio State team's as talented as the one last year.
Yeah.
And, really, they didn't have any problems moving the ball in Clemson inside the 20s, very similar to Notre Dame, what we saw yesterday. The problem becomes once that field shrinks, like, it's really hard to move it on that defensive line of Clemson's. And so I think you're going to see more of the same.
Right.
In this game. I think that's probably a 14-point win by Clemson, in all honesty. Not trying to disrespect Ohio State, but, I mean, in this era of college football, 14 points isn't much. And so I kind of feel like that's probably, I feel like that's probably about where that one goes. And then, Alabama versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a very well-coached team. I think they execute very well, but Alabama's just simply more talented.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's kind of the difference. I think Notre Dame tends to be about good enough to get to the playoffs, but then they seem to get, they just seem to be outmatched once they kind of get against, elite teams with elite talent. And so I think it'll probably be more of the same. I can see that one being similar to what the ACC title game was. Notre Dame probably loses anywhere from, 17 to 28.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so then again, like I said, we're going to, should be kind of a battle royale again between Clemson and Alabama. I wouldn't sell, Clemson short on that either. Again, like, the thing that I think that Venables seems to be really good at is, he kind of makes you beat him with explosive plays. Like, you don't really seem to score a whole lot on Clemson inside the 20s.
Yeah.
Or inside the red zone, I should say. And so if you can't do that, I mean, that's tough. And I mean, this is going to be the best defensive line that Alabama's faced. And, for them, unfortunately, their center got hurt in the SEC title game, which, I don't know the severity of the injury, but presuming he can't play, you wonder about continuity issues there.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong. And, Clemson, or Alabama steamrolls Clemson as well. But, I think it could, set up for a really exciting matchup again.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the most interesting matchup, probably closest game, will be Clemson Ohio State. But I know our friend Scott, he's going to love that matchup. He wants to get that one back, but I think it's going to be Dabo taking care of business again.
Yeah, I didn't realize Dabo's like 3-0 against Ohio State, right?
Yeah, that's why he doesn't like him. A little anger there. And then last year, that was a tough loss because Ohio State had the better overall team, in my opinion, compared to this year.
Well, and that's what kind of begs the question, too, is that, you almost wonder a little bit about Ryan Day's offense. And again, it could just be, that Clemson does that to talented offenses, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Venables kind of onto something here defensively as well, because they even did it to LSU some last year, where they kind of got, once LSU kind of got down in the red zone, they kind of gave them some problems. I think the difference was LSU was able to get some explosive scores that maybe kind of blew the doors open a bit.
Yeah.
But it seems like kind of once they play an elite level defense, they kind of seem to struggle.
Yeah.
And so you kind of wonder about if it's going to be more of the same this year. Because I think most people going into that game, that matchup last year, Ohio State was kind of considered the favorite. And I think a lot of people weren't really certain if Ohio State or LSU was the better of those two teams going into the playoffs. You knew those were probably the two best on paper.
Yeah.
But, Clemson kind of stole the show again. And Clemson plays their best ball, it seems like, in the playoffs. So
yeah, Dabo gets them going, and Dabo is the Saban killer, beating them twice.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be, a really good game. Another one, Notre Dame. I think Uncle Lou is bringing it up because, he likes to troll on Notre Dame. I don't think they've beaten like a top 10 opponent since like 98, and they've been in all these games. They're like 0-10.
Well, they did beat Clemson this year, though, right?
Well,
or is he just referring to like postseason?
Postseason, they're terrible in postseason. If you look at it, they haven't won like a postseason top 10 matchup, and since like '98, they're like 0-10, 0-11.
Yeah, that's that record.
Yeah, it's bad. So we'll see. Should be interesting.
And a big shout out to Uncle Lou as well.
Uncle Lou's the man. Love what he does.
Yep.
Best in the business. Even as a Georgia fan, he'll shoot you to you straight if you don't want to hear it.
He does.
He does. Going on to the New Year's Six Bowl. We talked about this one earlier. Texas A&M, North Carolina. I think Texas A&M comes in with a chip on their shoulder on that one. North Carolina might be a little speed bump. Oregon, Ohio State might be kind of interesting. I think Oregon, they got in because, remember, they upset USC Friday to win the Pac-12 championship. Because that would have been an interesting debate. I think Sean brought that up. If USC would have won, they would have been 6-0. They might have been like, why aren't we in the top four? We're the same setup as Ohio State, but they got knocked off Friday. Got Cincinnati and Georgia, which I kind of mentioned earlier, were kind of like the bridesmaid dessert for that day, or actually appetizer, as you get us at 12, and then the other games, playoff games at 4 and 8:45 or 5 o'clock. And then the Cotton Bowl is interesting. Oklahoma against Florida. Oklahoma quietly won out the rest of their games, lost a early 2 games, and I think it's announced Kyle Pitts is sitting out for that Florida game. So what do you think about that? So you'll just have –
I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in that in that Cotton Bowl. I'll give them credit. It seems like that's when they actually got the matchup right on.
Yeah.
That's an exciting match. I don't know that I could have picked a better like Cotton Bowl than that because those are two teams. I think last time they played was maybe the national title game back in 2008.
Right. My only complaint is, do you think Florida with 3 losses, I know they played for the SEC championship game, but you lost, is still ahead of Georgia? I know you beat them head-to-head, but they have 3 losses. We got 2. You agree with that on the rankings? Being a Georgia fan.
No, I don't, but I kind of feel like we always seem to get, like, screwed on some of these matchups, though, too. Like, when we lost to Alabama in the SEC title game in 2012, I mean, we still won the East, but Florida's one bowl. Yeah, Florida got the Sugar Bowl invite. To me, that was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe we were a bit more deserving. And I don't know if that kind of comes down to the bowl tie-ins as well, where, the winner of X division of X conference gets the invite as opposed to really evaluating the individual teams.
If they lose this, what are they, like 7-4 on the year? If you look at that on paper, you're like, they had 4 losses and they're a top 10 team? Come on.
And the reality is a big reason why they could have gotten that invite was due to their performance last night. I mean, they played great. They really did.
They did. They hung around.
I know this is borderline blasphemous, but in the spirit of full disclosure, I will say, a part of me, I found myself pulling for Florida to maybe like
you did say
pull the upset. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because you really don't see Bama lose. Certainly not a lot to the SEC. So it was the last time, 2010, right, Trey?
Exactly.
So it may have just been on that performance last night that gets it for him.
South Carolina and Steve Spurrier, ironically, last SEC East school to beat Saban.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they're still updating some of these. I guess it's SEC versus at large.
For what bowl?
Like Outback Bowl. They got some of these smaller bowls. I think it's trying to figure. I know they got some teams opting out. But actually, ironically, the Myrtle Beach Bowl is going to get them started tomorrow. North Texas against Sean's alumni, App State, and he's a Georgia alumni, of course, but he'll throw that in there. Hey, my alumni, Georgia Southern, is in the New Orleans Bowl this week against Louisiana Tech, so there'll be some bowl games on.
Yeah.
Coastal Carolina gets Liberty, be a good one. Hugh Freeze, that's a good one, and the Cure Bowl, Lending Tree. I always love the name of the bowl is hilarious. Hey, the
Lending Tree.
Hey, Lending Tree. Hey, the Duke's Mayo Bowl is going to be Wake Forest in Wisconsin.
I love Duke's actually ponied up some money to get a bowl sponsorship.
Hey, Duke, what is Mayo? Duke's Mayo, is that like mayonnaise?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. On the 247 Georgia board, there was a debate over what was the best mayo, and actually, I think the consensus was it was Duke's.
Oh, nice. Hey, speaking of that, on the board, we'll throw this in here. Sean got one of his posts deleted. What was that about, sir?
D-line? Oh, it actually wasn't deleted.
Clemson's D-line, what's that about? You're going at it. They're deep.
Oh, I think the debate was about Trey Scott, who I think we need to move on from, in all honesty. People were like, they were just commenting about how great. They were talking about how they thought that Clemson's back seven wasn't very good. And, I guess to some extent I get that, right? Because they're pretty easy to move the ball on in between the 20s. Inside the 20s, it's a completely different story. So I brought up the point that – I just brought up that point that, yeah, but – defensive line makes it a problem inside the 20s, and so then it kind of went down with how well Clemson recruits, and we can't lose people like Miles Murphy to them, who's had a great freshman year. And I said, well, we really either need to switch to a 4-3 defense, in my opinion, or you got to get rid of Trey Scott, because the guy, I understand he's brought in a 5-star defensive lineman each of the last 3 classes, but the issue really is what's he brought in behind that, which is crap, number one. The other issue with it is that I don't really think that he's developed these guys very well either. Where was Trevon Walker this year, right? This guy, at one point there was talks about making him the top overall player in the class last year over Nolan Smith, and we didn't see the guy.
Yeah. Transition into that, we'll talk a little recruiting because they had early signing day, and we can talk about this more. So, speaking of Trey Scott, since we're jumping right in, what was his probably big get for this class, if you had to pick?
I think it was TID, like Terry and Ingram Dawkins.
There's your boy right here, 4-star, number 152. So added to the room.
Mm-hmm.
You got BBG. Brock Vandergriff, we're waiting on him. Ironically, he did. He's about to play in a state championship, won 50-30 in his game. I know it's a single A classification, but good for him. They're going to play for the title. He had 3 touchdowns and a rushing, 3 passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. Sorry, I know you like him. Mondon are the big names. Of course, Marius Mims is going to be a beast, 6'7", 6'8", 315, probably plug and play, left or right tackle. So how about this, Sean? In this class, give me the one that makes the initial impact right away, and then give me maybe an under-the-radar guy you're excited about, maybe no one knows about, and maybe make a splash if you had to pick.
I think, to me, under the radar, it's going to be Dumas Johnson. I think it's Darman Dumas Johnson. He was the inside linebacker. Is out of Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland. There you go right there. 4-star.
Yeah, to be honest, to me on film, his film looks way more impressive than Samil Mondon's. Samil Mondon looks like a great athlete on film, but you're looking about somebody who's like a legit linebacker. To me, he looks the part. Has that nasty streak. Great in run coverage or whatever. Probably needs some work in pass coverage, but to me, it seems like he'll make the rotation just in run coverage, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Mondon's probably a little bit more of a project. In terms of the guy that I think maybe makes the most immediate impact, I guess it kind of depends on if Sawyer comes back or not. I think if Sawyer comes back, he's probably gonna keep him at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't come back, I think you probably have Mims, who's either going to swing left to right or tackle, depending on where things go.
Who was who I forget who was right tackle? He did pretty good this year. Who was that?
Oh, it was Warren McClendon.
Do you think Mims can beat McClendon out? Because I heard McClendon did really well this year, or it'd be like added depth. And you got Broderick Jones. They say he needs to bulk up, but he's looking good.
I mean, he possibly could. I mean, yeah. I mean, he's got a good shot. I mean, to me, like Mims looks like he certainly needs some work. I mean, if you look at his film, he's run blocking on pass plays down the field, which is it's a blatant penalty.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, he's got crazy athletic ability.
He's so big, man. He's mammoth. They say good kid too.
Yeah.
How about Broderick Jones? I heard has been blasting them. Like they said, the best pass defensive or pass blocker, but they say running he gets a little lost. So it's almost like he got the opposite thing with Broderick Jones. Heard he's a beast on passing plays, but when you're running the ball, he doesn't run block that well, and he's kind of like lean. He needs to put some weight on, right, Broderick Jones?
Yeah, and I guess it depends on how much you're going to pull him. Like, I mean, the big thing is as long as you're keeping, the pocket clean, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, actual signing day was a little quiet, but you were excited because we got Sorey, and we did whiff on Dallas Turner and Barrett Carter. So you said this was a big get, right? You said you like this kid, Sorey?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like his highlight tape's 11 minutes long. That gives you like any indication.
Yeah.
And what's kind of cool about it is that like he played. I saw a tape of him playing quarterback, running back, safety, linebacker, and I mean he looked impressive doing all of it. To be completely honest, he just looks like a football player. He looks like he's got a good instincts and intelligence for the game. So I think he's one that can come in and play. I think the issue though is that I don't know that you're necessarily seeing him freshman year because we've got some depth there.
Yeah.
And we got some quality upperclassmen ahead of them.
I think the guy for me that makes under the radar maybe the biggest impact, I'm gonna go with Nyland Green because we are lacking in the secondary.
It's a good call.
We might lose Tyson Campbell. Stokes is probably gone. LeCount's gone, so I feel like he can make an impact. And a little known fact, Rusty Manziel from 247 always likes long snapper. He long snapped at Newton. So
that is good.
It is good, but he played I heard a good kid, but yeah, that was a good get. He is 4-star. Who else? Do you think if I had to get nitpicky, do you think we kind of whiffed a little bit? I know we were deep at wide receiver, but you're getting like Jackson Meeks, who they say has been beasting it, but a little bit of injury prone, was a low 3-star, but under the radar. And then we got the other guy, Adon Mitchell. So I'm like, you got Bama getting 4 stars, in the top 10 in the nation, and you see what they have with Waddle and Devontae Smith. Are we kind of whiffing on this to have the elite offenses to play with big boys?
I mean, yeah, you would have liked to have seen us do a little bit better there. I mean, for certain. I mean, I could even understand Notre Dame, or rather Alabama, getting like those 4 guys. But I mean, come on, like we could have at least pulled a 4-star here or there.
Yeah.
I do think one thing that benefited Alabama was the fact that Devontae Smith and Waddle are both gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's clearly an offense that features prominently their wide receivers, so that's great advertising.
Yeah.
Ohio State had a really good wide receiver class as well. And so I think part of it is just a byproduct of the offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you would have liked to have seen us do a little bit better there. I mean, again, I think the key comes down to how well we evaluate these guys and play them,
Yeah, and then I know going forward, I think our only other big target, which I think, who do you think he's leaning towards Florida? If we can get Terry on Arnold, will be huge, right? I know that's our next big target, and I know we whiffed on Mason Smith. He's hard to get out of Louisiana. Foreman's probably going to USC or Clemson, a Clemson lean. I know we kind of went after him. So, how do you see like the last four? This is what Kirby's fifth class. How do you see this one compared to the other Kirby classes? Like good class, great class, okay.
I mean, I guess we're so spoiled under Kirby. Like, I mean, this class probably on paper has more talent than that quote unquote dream team class that Mark Rick had. What was it, like 2010 or whatever it was, when you got like Ray Drew and all them other guys?
Ray Drew, the past of disaster. He came back with Ray. I didn't think I'd hear Ray Drew's name today. But anyway, go ahead. Good call.
But it's true.
Yeah, it was.
But I mean, it's obviously not remotely as good as like the past on paper as, his past three classes. But you had a COVID year.
You're basically selling on Zoom this year. Zoom is recruiting. It's crazy. Can't sell Athens.
Right. To me, the other interesting thing with this too that you have to factor in is transfer portals, right?
Yeah.
I think that's as big as anything. Like, who do you really get in the transfer portal? I mean, there's rumors maybe you get Eric Gilbert to come back, or not to come back, but to come to Georgia.
Which would be great. Beast.
Yeah. And then who else do you really get? I mean, I guess LSU seems like they're in a world of trouble right now.
Yeah, it would be great to get Mason Smith. This has been the year together with him struggling, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
How about compared? Do you think just Alabama just reloaded 24? I mean, 6 5-stars is crazy. Was this overall their best, maybe on paper ever, ranking wise? You're in the 318, 319 ranking, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of compared to our like 2018 class, right? When we had Justin Fields and all them other guys.
Yeah.
It's certainly up there.
Is this like J.C. Latham or this Tommy? Are these guys like Alex Leatherwood good? I mean, he's crazy.
I think so. I mean, I think they're like the number one and number two offensive tackles in the class.
He seems a little tiny, man. You gotta get some weight. Just looking at his weight, 6'6", 283. Might need to get him in the weight room. Maybe he just like he rating wise was great. Just sounds smaller for. You wanted this kid, didn't you? And that one you wanted real bad, Dallas Turner. He's beat. You said he's a beast, right?
Yeah, great outside linebacker. The thing with Alabama's class is always, regardless of where they're ranked, is it seems like they do a really good job of evaluating players.
Yeah.
And part of that is I think that Saban, as well as much as anybody, is kind of really identified. He's always been great at figuring out, all right, this is what you kind of need to do to win.
Yeah.
Whether he likes it or not, and he does. It's very like Bill Belichick-esque that way.
That's why.
Be practical and not, egotistical. Or I guess, stubborn about how you think you need to play the game. I think that's been big for them. So I think as long as they do that, they should be good. I think the other thing too is that in some of these past years where Bama maybe struggled a little bit in recruiting, or it seemed like we changed the gaps. There's a couple of years ago where he had a lot of staff turnover and then kind of cleaned out a lot of dead wood. And he's brought in some like fantastic recruiters. I believe the kid that recruited Saquon Barkley, or was his running back coach at Penn State.
Yeah.
That's their running back coach now, and that guy was just nasty. I think he ended up getting that wide receiver, the number 1 overall wide receiver. Is from down there in South Florida, and then he also got J.C. Latham's commitment. So he's kind of got his foot in the door down there in South Florida.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's something too, where I think we kind of that hurt us. I mean, it was the right move to move on from Jim Coley, but or James Coley rather. But we kind of got to get somebody who's got better ties down there in South Florida, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe clearing out some some dead weight, so to speak. Trey Scott.
Yeah, I know you're big on that. So top 4, number 4 recruiting class could possibly move up if we add Mike Terry on Arnold. We're looking at probably 4, pretty solid. I guess the rest of the SEC, Texas A&M 7, Florida 10, Tennessee, who was up to remember 20 something real early, like in the summer they were rolling. They dropped down to 15. And then I hate to see to make fun of them is the Boom Chickens. I think you had to go all the way down. I think they were like 105, and then Vanderbilt was at 49. So hey, good luck, Shane Beamer is all I got to say on that.
Yeah, what a terrible hire that was. We're not going to go over who I thought they should hire, but
yeah. So yeah, all in all, Georgia's got some work to do, but still a good class. I feel like we're trending up for next year though. If we maybe can win the bowl game, Daniels comes back. Hopefully, we got all the wideouts.
Monken comes back.
That'd be huge. But do you think we got the Jimmys and Joes to hang around with the big boys next year? What do you think? Possibly. And you got Clemson right away.
I think it depends on how good our offensive – I think what you need to happen is you need – and again, I haven't heard any rumors about Monken leaving, but you want Todd Monken to come back. You want JT Daniels to come back. And again, I know I'm not trying to cause paranoia or whatever, but just I kind of learned to expect the unexpected when it comes to kids leaving early. Learned that after Holyfield left early.
Broke her heart.
Well, yeah, it was just a stupid move. Anybody that really thought he was getting drafted is an idiot. But
I think he's practice squad somewhere.
Yeah. But I think if you can get, not Coley, if you can make sure Monken comes back, JT Daniels comes back, and then also I think it's Zeus White comes back, along with Jordan Davis. He seems to be leaning that way.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think that probably gives you you hope it gives you kind of a similar effect to what Alabama had this year when they had Alex Leatherwood, who probably would have been a first-round pick last year. Najee Harris, who would have been certainly would have gotten drafted in the first 2 rounds of last year's draft. And Dylan Moses, who I don't really know where he would have gotten drafted, but, I think it maybe would have given you a similar effect to having those guys come back. I think the issue is going to be Clemson and that defensive line, though. I mean, that defensive line's a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I guess what I'm worried about a little bit next year is the secondary because they're losing a lot. Any of the guys they could stay again. Like if you got Stokes and Campbell for some reason to stay, because of course LeCount's gone, you got to replace him because he's a senior year. But if they stay, that would be huge. I think. What do you think?
Well, the theory is that it seems like there's such a premium put on cornerbacks these days because of how pass friendly the league is.
Yeah.
I think Stokes is probably gone. Campbell, maybe not. Like, if I'm being – I see Campbell probably going too because he's projected to be a first-round pick.
He's only had 1 pick in his whole career, just saying he was a 5-star. I know it's tough out there. But Stokes, man, Stokes is money on the picks.
He was, but I guess part of the issue, though, is that it'd have to do with, they're obviously throwing it at Stokes' way, right? They're not really throwing it Campbell's way. So it's part of that, like –
yeah.
You know what I mean? I think both of them. I mean, if Daniel is going pro, right? I mean, you got to think Campbell and Stokes are both gone. You know what I mean? Daniel's by far the worst out of the 3.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to DJ Daniel, a damn good dog. Yeah. But just from a talent standpoint, he's clearly like the run of that litter.
Yeah, probably trying to get out quick. Oh, yeah, and another one, the Jermaine Johnson thing is interesting. I was going to bring that up. Do you think he stays? I know he hasn't got in, but it'd be good to keep him.
Well, first of all, I think part of the reason why he was thinking about leaving had to do with some family issues at home.
Yeah.
Regardless, and I know he's going to do it anyway, but just, I hope he makes the decision that's best for him and his family. And not necessarily the decision that's best for Georgia, right?
Where's he from, by the way? I know he came from
Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah, they got some problems there.
So, I mean, but that said, it seemed like initially it was looking like he was gone, and it could have just been an initial overreaction or whatever. I don't know. He hasn't put his name in the portal yet.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised to hear that he was considering putting his name in the portal because I thought he's probably a guy that's looking at going pro, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you and maybe part of it has to do with, the demand of things, right? Like I think there's cornerbacks seem to be more in demand. Way more in demand than like a defensive tackle is right now. And wide receivers are clearly way more in demand than running backs are.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if part of that's, based on where they evaluate pass rushers or whatever. But I would think that he'd probably have a pretty good shot at going pro and getting drafted. But, he's another one where if we can get him to come back, because I think he had a sack in
every game he played in.
Yeah.
I know he's injured and banged up, but yeah.
And so that's another one where it's just, if you get him to come back, and you get Jordan Davis to come back and, Zeus comes back, I think it kind of gives you a lot on paper, to build towards.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a spring in too. Get JT Daniels with a spring. We'll have Brock Vandergrift coming in the future. I know Sean felt verdict's out on him, but he looks good. Looks good against the lesser competition. That'll be good to have him back up. I think because you only get Daniels one more year if we get him back one more year. So the future looks bright. Recruiting was good, so we'll see.
And if we can kind of go to one more topic, actually, Gus Malzahn has been fired from Auburn.
Oh yeah, what'd you think about? I know we texted about. What'd you think about that from maybe a neutral SEC fan? Was that a good thing? Should have maybe waited? COVID year, $20 million buyout. They wanted him out. His overall record was actually pretty good. Just saying.
I think Auburn's hand was forced a little bit when Urban Meyer didn't take the Texas job, because I think for sure next year, if Herman doesn't have them in the playoffs, and if Hilton doesn't really improve things either at USC, I think both of those jobs are open, and they're clearly two of the more preeminent jobs. So, I mean, it was stupid for them to give Malzahn the extension a couple of years ago that they did, or certainly it seems that way. Again, I don't really necessarily know a lot of the dynamics that were at play there. But I actually think it was a very smart move to go ahead and let him go now. I think in terms of who you look to hire, I mean, to me, I would go after Hugh Freeze. I mean, the guy's had success in the SEC, and not just in the SEC, he's had success at Ole Miss, which, is not exactly easy to do.
He's beaten Saban, too.
And he's beaten, and that was going to be my next point, is that, in the state of Alabama, it's all about Alabama versus Auburn. He's beaten Saban. I think he had a 2-game winning streak against them. So, to me, he's somebody who, and again, I know he had some, recruiting issues or whatever, and that's certainly a big risk.
Yeah.
And had some other personal issues that went on that led to his termination at Ole Miss. But to me, like, the guy's also a winner too, and he can recruit.
Yep.
So that's somebody I would be my first call. And this is Auburn too, so like they're not exactly afraid to take, to make a controversial call on a coach and hire him. So, I mean, that to me is the call that you make. I know a lot of people are talking about Steve Sarkisian. And again, I don't want to, beat a guy down. I mean, his struggles with alcohol and alcoholism are well documented. I think he deserves all the praise in the world for, at least as far as we know, for managing it and overcoming it and, kind of, resurrecting his coaching career, so to speak. But, that said, like, I think he's somebody similar to Lane Kiffin, who also had baggage when he came to Alabama. I think maybe he's somebody you'd want to see have some success at a smaller school before maybe he gets a gig like an Auburn or, like a major SEC or ACC or Big Ten, Pac-12 job.
Yeah.
Because, you got to remember, like, he was coach at Washington, and I think his nickname, and again, a lot of it could be related to his alcohol issues, was 7-game start, because it didn't seem like he could get past the 7-game hump. And then, we saw what happened at USC. But, again, I know it's a bit of a gamble, but to me, I give Hugh Freeze a chance. And, you just got to let him know, like, look, this is kind of like your last shot, so to speak. I mean, he's done well at Liberty, right? I mean, the guy can clearly coach and win, but it's like, look, this is your last chance. You got to cut out all the, risque behavior, the cute stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, I shouldn't be saying this, but just at least let us know so we can cover it for you. And then
we can get you a good tractor phone.
Like, that makes them a major player, that hire.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping they get, like, I know they hired Kevin Steele. I haven't heard Sarkisian is the name they want to interview. So maybe they'll get one of those, being from a Georgia fan.
And that's the other thing. I don't know if, like, I guess the SEC, like, part of the compliance thing is whether or not a potential coaching candidate or somebody who maybe has been prior SEC coach can get a favorable reference. The issue may be whether or not they can get a favorable reference for Hugh Freeze or not.
Yeah.
But to me, like, he's a no-brainer. Like, I think you got to hire. I mean, if you're going to, like, spend that much money and give up that much money to let Gus Malzahn go,
yeah.
I mean, the one guy I think can win for you because he's done it in the SEC before is Hugh Freeze. So you got to hire him.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go and get Sark, look, Sark might end up being, like, a great coach. I don't really think that's going to happen based on what we've seen. I mean, even if he's like, past his alcoholism issues or whatever, you got Kirby's juggernaut you're dealing with. You got Saban's juggernaut you're dealing with.
Yeah.
That's a tough job.
It is.
And so, you need somebody who just, I think, you need to have somebody who knows what they're doing and can coach. And between the two of them on paper, the guy who's got the best resume is Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
I don't think you throw that much money towards Gus Malzahn and his termination, in addition to paying the new guy, unless you're going after a home run hire this year.
Yeah, unless you got somebody in the circle. Yeah.
But who else is in the circle that's out there that's worth anything,
Exactly.
I mean, who else? I mean, if you're the AD or the hiring committee, whatever it is, who would your pick be?
I do like the Hugh Freeze. I know there's a lot around him, but I almost would look at maybe like a Campbell from from Iowa State is a trending name, or maybe
That's a good call.
Or even a Finkel, whatever his name is, for Cincinnati, who's built these programs up, something like that. Just saying, I do like Hugh Freeze. He's been in there. But
yeah.
These other two guys seem to be kind of, hate to say, clean background, and they've built them up.
Yeah, and I mean, you might be right there. I guess the one concern I would have with those two is what kind of connections do they have to the area? Because, as well as I do, recruiting is big.
It is, yeah. That's a good point.
Mean, X's and O's are important, but so are the Johnnies and Joes, and how.
Yeah, it is.
So.
Yeah, I like that. Well, cool, man. Well, definitely good. It'll be a good thing looking at Auburn. But anything else to get off your chest?
No. I will say one thing. Like, listen, like, I understand it's easy to kind of let our guards down a little bit. Like, me and my family were actually exposed to somebody who's tested positive for COVID. Yeah. And so now we're having to do the whole 14-day quarantine thing, which is obviously annoying. But at the same time, guys, just be careful out there. I know they're approving vaccines. You don't know when they're going to be out there. But
exactly.
Everybody's a little bit stir crazy, got cabin fever, but just be safe.
Exactly.
And Merry Christmas. I'm not going to say Happy Holidays. That's bullshit. Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Exactly.
Happy belated Hanukkah. Happy Ramadan. Happy Festivus.
Yeah.
All of that.
Exactly. Hey, well, that's another thanks for Sean coming back on. Maybe he'll make more appearances coming up. And
no, I'll be back from now on. Like, okay. I had some personal issues I need to take care of with me.
Yeah.
I'll tell the audience, all 60 of them. But I'm back.
It's back better. All right. Well, that's great. Great to have Sean back on. And Herschel Talkers. Hold on, Sean. And we're out. Hey.
Yeah, but dude, thanks for like following up and making sure I got back on. I really enjoyed it.
No, you're good, man. Thanks, man.
Dude, we do need to put the blooper clip up there, though. Me digging in my nose. That's hilarious.
That is great. I'll sign and leave. Let me see if I can get this.